unatukanwa, lazima kuvumilia. Moi ametukanwa mara ngapi?
In the 1970s, the former president Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi faced one of the most humiliating moments in his political career after being slapped by a very powerful police officer. But before I tell you this story, please hit the subscribe button. My name is Sam Kivuva, and this is my African Tales. 2 to 3 years before passing on of the Kenya's first president Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, there were talks within the government and political groups about who is to take over after Kenyatta. This is after Kenyatta's health shown signs of deteriorating. According to his close sources, Kenyatta started falling sick by 1968. 5 years after independence. In 1969, he suffered a stroke, and by 1976, things worsened when his memory became poor and his eyesight deteriorated. He could not read comfortably, calling for his speeches to be written in very huge numbers. In his book, Walking in Kenyatta's Struggles, Duncan Mwendwa, who served as secretary to the cabinet in Kenyatta's government as well as president of Central Bank of Kenya, says that Kenyatta was suffering from gout, explaining the reasons why the president was seen in open shoes. But worst of all, he was also suffering from a serious heart problem.
Altogether, managed built over 300 schools, paid and controlled finance by...
And so, the former Attorney General Charles Njonjo invited a South African cardiologist by the name Christian Barnard, known to have performed the first ever human-to-human heart transplant, to attend to the president. The doctor proposed a pacemaker to regulate Kenyatta's heart rhythm, but Kenyatta refused to be treated.
Well, that is...
A day after, while he was at his Atiririka home in Mombasa, the president collapsed and went in coma for 3 days. At the same time, there was a rising politician by the name Daniel Arap Toroitich Moi, a former school teacher who had been elected as a member of Legislative Council in Rift Valley under African Democratic Union, KADU, formed by him and Ronald Ngala.
Nilisema tu ya kutafuta kura, tafuteni kura kwa amani. Kama mtu anakataza wewe kura, hapana kasirika. It's a long way to liberate to the sweetest girl. Fimbo ya nyayo yatuongoza kwenda mbele.
In 1964, KADU was dissolved and Moi joined KANU, and for the first time, President Kenyatta appointed him as the Minister of Home Affairs. 3 years later, through Charles Njonjo's recommendation, Moi was promoted to be Vice President after Joseph Murumbi resigned on November 1966. President Kenyatta had a soft spot for Moi, and the likelihood of him becoming his successor was evident for all to see.
His leadership has not been to darkness and death, but to light and prosperity. And that is, during my time, I have altogether managed, built.
But there was a problem. A group from Mount Kenya by the name Change the Constitution movement, headed by powerful individuals like Mbiu Koinange and Dr. Njoroge Mugai, James Gishuru and Kihika Kimani, father to Governor Susan Kihika, plotted to bring Moi down. their biggest mission: to change the constitution so that the deputy president does not automatically succeed the president. They had a popular say that Kenya's leadership would not go past the River Chania, and so Moi, a member from Turgen community many miles away from Mount Kenya, was about to face the music.
Nitajiuzulu ama nitastaafu kipindi hiki cha miaka mitano ikiisha.
In the beginning, there was a smear campaign and propaganda about Moi happening across the country. During a rally in 1977 at Tinderet in Nandi County, several politicians from Rift Valley, along with their colleagues from Mount Kenya, started campaigning for replacement of Moi, proposing Taita Toet as speaker after another. The politicians blamed Moi for every mess that was happening in the country at that time. In fact, politician Kihika Kimani compared Moi's strength to that of an insect that could be crushed. Now, among the most powerful political individuals who stood out that time was James Erastus Mungai, who was a very powerful police commander in charge of Rift Valley province and who is known for making police officers under him do very odd jobs like milking his cows, feeding his dogs, and washing his horses. James Mungai was operating under the office of the vice president, but his connection with the high office in the land gave him more power and made him proud. In one incident, 1975, Moi had just arrived from an OAU meeting in Kampala, Uganda, but on arriving at Nairobi, Mungai accused him of illegally smuggling guns into the country and attempting to overthrow the government. Mungai went to an extent of sending his police officers to Moi's office in Nakuru to do one of the most intense searches of the time, where Moi was even forced to take off his clothes. Mungai was not satisfied. While in the Nakuru State House, this policeman slapped Moi right in front of President Kenyatta. Despite raising complaints to the president, there was no action taken. Kenyatta asked him a hard question. Between Mungai and you, who is the other person's boss? It was a hard question to answer. According to Moi's official autobiographer and the writer of The Making of an African Statesman, Andrew Morton, says that Moi was then living in a great fear of being assassinated. Mount Kenya Mafia, by 1969, had taken an oath of unity, which united the central region, swearing to protect the presidency from leaving the House of Mumbi. With all that paranoia and intimidation lingering his head, Moi started preparing his resignation letter.
Kwa sababu watu hawa ambao wanaruka kichwa wanaeleza uvumi.
But the former Central Provincial Commissioner Simeon Nyachae pleaded with him not to resign. A short while later, Charles Njonjo pushed for the declaration that it was a treason planning for death of a statesman, and with support of President Kenyatta, he blocked any constitutional changes, and this caught the Mount Kenya Mafia off guard. Their plans to do away with Moi had been disrupted. In August 21st, 1978, Kenyatta's health badly deteriorated. During one of his official assignments, Kenyatta excused himself and went to the washroom, and 2 minutes later, he fainted. In the morning of August 22nd, 1978, President Kenyatta was declared dead. While at his Kabarak home, Moi was called, and he immediately made arrangements to take over the office. The then heads of intelligence, James Kinyotu and Geoffrey Kirithi, advised him to be careful, for there were roadblocks to keep him off Nairobi, and also the plots to kill him. And so, President Moi came to Nairobi on casual vehicles through Ngong. After chairing a cabinet meeting at the State House that night, news about Kenyatta's death were made public through the Voice of Kenya. Moi therefore became the acting president for the next 90 days, and suddenly his critics started seeking his favor. Politicians countrywide started campaigning for him and the cabinet pledged loyalty to him. Some of the then members of cabinet included Mwai Kibaki, James Gishuru, Biu Koinange and Taita Towet, among others. After 90 days, Daniel Arap Moi became Kenya's second president unopposed.
wangu wote na kwamba nitahifadhi, nitailinda na kuitetea katiba ya Kenya.
James Mungai, a powerful police officer who had slapped him, was now restless and he ran for exile in Sudan through Turkana, and later he ran to hide in Switzerland. While abroad, he wrote a letter to Moi asking for forgiveness, and President Moi granted him forgiveness. On December 19, 1978, Mungai came back to his Nakuru home, and now away from the military, he ventured in dairy and horse farming. Charles Njonjo, who had saved Moi from Mount Kenya Mafia, retained his position as the Attorney General, while Mwai Kibaki was appointed the Vice President. After being labeled as a passing cloud, President Moi ended up ruling Kenya for the next 24 years, marking the longest serving president in the Kenya's history. My name is Sam Kivuva, and this is My African Tales.